Hello, I'm El Director, and you are watching Indie Rebel, Hollywood effects without a Hollywood budget. Today, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and do just a video. I don't know how long it's going to be honest, but I want to show you how to do clean plates and rig removal using Natron and Blender. So we're going to use free and open source software to remove objects from our scenes. Now, this video came about because at my day job, I had been using Nuke to do exactly just this. In fact, this is actually a shot that we've been working on at my day job. And as you can see scrubbing through here, we have dolly track, and then we've got these tennis balls on top of these posts as well. And there's a lot of parallax happening behind them and things, like the ground is shifting with them. We got an extra tennis ball over here, and Nuke's camera tracker and then 3D projection mapping had been invaluable for doing this kind of thing. However, recently, my company's decided not to purchase additional Nuke licenses for our new users, new employees, and so I had to come up with a new solution. I'm the visual effects supervisor. This is my job, is to create the workflows and such and make sure that everything goes smooth. So this is what I've come up with. We're using completely free software. The reason why we chose Natron, of course, is because it's so similar to Nuke, so there's not a whole lot of retraining that needs to take place. And then Blender, mostly because I'm familiar with it, and I've been using Blender since back in the 2.23 days, so I've been using it for quite a long time. And Blender does do projection mapping. I never done it before in Blender. I had to learn how to do it, but when I saw it and saw how easy it was, I'm like, oh, I have to share this with all these other Natron users, because for me, one of the biggest sticking points of Natron and not being able to fully adopt it into a workflow has been its lack of 3D tracking and stuff like that and those kind of capabilities. And now that I know that I can do that in Blender, specifically for rig removal, I'm excited to make Natron a part of my workflow, and so I want to share that with y'all today. So this is the shot, and what we need to do is we are going to go ahead and do our clean plating here inside of Natron. We're not going to go to Photoshop, which for those of you that have purchased my Indie Rebel VFX course, you know that in that video, or in that training series, I used Photoshop for clean plating. Now I do it inside of Natron, so much faster, so much easier. So if you've purchased the course and you were asking about how to use Rotopaint and stuff like that, you're going to learn that today. By the way, I am going to assume that you have some level of comprehension and capabilities with Natron and Blender already. I'm not going to be holding your hand through this every step of the way. You're basically just going to watch me do the shot. I'm not going to be calling out all the keyboard shortcuts and things. If you are not familiar with Natron and you're not familiar with Blender, check out on my channel. I have 3 introductory videos from the Indie Rebel course. You can check them out. They show you how to set up your software and the basics in node-based compositing. If you feel like you want more, head on over to indierebel.co where you can purchase the full course. It's like 6 hours of training. We've got 15 or so courses on there. Everything from muzzle flashes to screen replacements to even poster design and stuff like that. And it's all using completely free software. Not all open source, but it is all free. And that's what's so cool, is that you can do Hollywood effects without a Hollywood budget, and that's what Indie Rebel is all about. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing I do whenever I get a new shot is I like to go ahead and analyze it. And what I'm doing is I'm looking for problems that I might have. I'm also looking for good keyframes that would make great clean plates. So problems that I see right off the bat is the fact that we've got this ball on a post that starts off very close where the ground is extremely detailed, but then it ends up very far away where the ground is not so detailed. Now, ordinarily what I would do in a situation like this is I would find the first frame, or somewhere near the first frame where I can see the entire object, and paint it out. However, due to how close we actually get, painting out a rig like this is going to require 2 clean plates and a fade between them using the merge nodes. I'm not going to get into that today, so what we will tackle though is this other post and then this one, the dolly track that's here on the ground. Now, at first glance, somebody that's new to compositing and rig removal might think that these are going to be done 2 completely different ways. But as you'll see as we go along, I can actually do them exactly the same without having to jump through a lot of hoops. So the next thing I want to look at is what kind of geometry would the scene include if these objects did not exist. And on a shot like this is actually really easy. At no point in time does the ball go in front of the goalpost or the fences back here or anything like that. These balls and the dolly track for that matter are all completely on the ground plane. So that tells me, as the compositor, that as long as I can accurately create geo or geometry where the ground is, then my job's gonna be pretty easy. All I have to do is project my clean plates onto one piece of geo. So this is actually gonna be a really, really easy remove, with the exception of this bit over here, which, like I said, we're not getting into today. By the way, I've actually already done this shot for work before, but I'm using this as an example because I thought this is something that a lot of people might encounter. So let's take a look at this rig over here first, and let's find a good frame for that. And I know from experience that I actually want to use frame 192. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to select the reader, hit P for Rotopaint, move it off to the side over here, and let's make this full screen so we can see what we're doing. Zoom in a little bit, that's nice. I'm going to use Shift and click drag to make my brush a little bit bigger, and then I'm going to use Control and click drag to, whoops, I gotta hit the clone tool, there we go, and Control click drag to find my source. And now it's just like Photoshop. You can see we can literally just paint this out. Just like that. All we're doing, one frame, piece of cake, we're done, that's it. Alright, next thing we need to do is go ahead and write out that one frame to disk. So we add a write node. It's going to ask us where we want to save it. I actually already do have a folder set up here for that. That is the write plate on frame 192, so you can see I have a folder set up for that. I've already pre-rendered these things just to save time, but you can see my naming convention. I create a folder for the clean plate, and I put down, you know, where it is and what frame it is, and we'll actually be rendering out this sequence here in a little bit. But for right now, what I want to do is just go ahead and just stick it in my main folder, and we will call this write 192.png. I'm going to save it as a PNG file. You can do it as wherever you want. I just like PNGs. Hit save, and if we go into our properties bin here, scroll that up so we can see, I want to do RGB only. I'm also going to come down here to frame range and only render the frame that I want. So I select manual. We want 192 to 192, and we're going to make it 16-bit, then hit render, and that's all there is to that. So now I'd come back to the node graph, and I would do the same thing with the other objects in the scene. So I'm going to go to frame like 308, and let's go and pan over here. I would create a new Rotopaint node and paint out this ball and this track. And then I also, I think it's like frame 76 or something like that, have painted out this other post here as well. So we're just going to repeat the process, and when all is said and done, you're going to end up with one node there, and another one here. And each one of these will have their own write node attached to them. What I like to do now is just go ahead and line them up a little bit like that. Select this all, hit tab and type in backdrop. And we'll just go and group all that there, and we'll call this clean plates. Let's go ahead and make it a larger font, like size 10. There we go. And let's see, if we actually go ahead and move these over, we'll be able to read that a little bit better. That. Perfect. All right. So now I know that this backdrop contains all my clean plate rotos, and like I said, each one of those are going to get rendered out just one frame. All we're worried about is one frame, so make that frame good. Now with our clean plates done, let's go ahead and bounce over to Blender. And as you can see, I have already tracked the shot here. I used the grease pencil to outline the actor, and then excluded that from the auto tracking. For those of you guys that are curious, here are my auto track settings. I change it to location scale and previous frame. I also normalize it, and then I come down here, and these are my other settings for this. The other thing I do is I will punch in the film back size for the camera. I know that we shot this on a Red Scarlet over a year ago, so the sensor width on that is 20.74, so it's always good to know that kind of stuff. And yeah, so this is the track. I've solved it, and as you can see, my solve error is 0.19, which is incredible. I'm not going to show you guys how to track right now because it is a bit time consuming. This tracking is actually the longest part of the entire process. If you guys want to see a video on motion tracking, let me know in the comments below, and I'll be happy to put one together. So let's go ahead and jump into our 3D scene here. And as you can see, I've got all these ground points here. I'm not worried about all the other junk back there. Alright, so one thing I also do like to do, and I've shown you guys this in another video before, but we'll put it here again, is I will come to my constraints and click constraint to F curve, and what this does is creates keyframes for that camera. Now, if I come over to my graph editor, I can actually start cleaning up my camera data. So if I shut all these off, oh, I got my track points showing too. That's no good. But I could come in here and looking at all that stuff. The only thing I might want to change right now is probably this one down here. This one's got a little bit of bumps and jumps in it. So I'm going to select that curve, whichever one that is. Looks like it's my Y rotation. Select all those. Now watch this. Here's the magic. I want to come in really close so you can see this. I press Alt-O, and you can see how that just immediately smooths out those keyframes. This makes your tracks so much better. You're not going to have them jumping around all over the place. I also like to go ahead and just check out my other tracks, make sure they're all looking good, and it looks like they are. These are the actual track points, so we're not going to worry about those. So that's how we go ahead and clean up our trackers for the camera. Alright, so since I took the time of orientating my ground plane to be the floor, I know that if I just go to my top view, we'll just click here and add a plane and scale it up a little bit. As long as that ends up right here on the center line, which it's not, but now it is, that will line up perfectly with the ground plane of the shot. And that geo's right where I need it to be. So now I come into the camera view, and let's go and bring up our sidebar here. Background images, and I like to increase that opacity. What I want to do now is just kind of scroll through the shot. In fact, we can even do it in wireframe, and make sure that at no point in time does any of the rig that we want to remove go beyond the geo. It gets a little too close for comfort there, so I'm going to go into edit mode, and let's just do an edge select. Select that back edge, and we'll move it back in Y space. Just to there should be good. Looking at this again. Again, the rigs I want to paint out stay within the geo that I've created. So we'll go to the end of the shot. That looks good. I can also see at this point that the geo is sticking well, so that is good too. Now, there's one really tricky thing about projection mapping in Blender. I don't know why this is, but we have to subdivide this geo. So once you get everything built up the way you want it to, by the way, if we were painting out the fences back here, or replacing, I should say, some of this with the fences, I would put a vertical plane far back in the distance to kind of cover that area too. But we're good right here, so let's go ahead and hit tab, go back to vertice mode, select them all, and let's just go ahead and subdivide this a few times. And we'll do one more. That should be good. Now with all those selected, I'm going to go to the frame that my clean plate was, which, if you remember, back over here in Natron, is frame 192. That's the one I want to do for the post off to the side. So bounce back to Blender, and I'm going to go to frame 192. Once I'm here, with all my vertices selected, I just press U, and I want to project from view. So we've UV unwrapped it based upon the camera view at this particular frame in time. So if I tab out of there, and we'll go to material view, and let's move this over, create a new window, go to our node editor. With that plane selected, let's go and add a new material. Go ahead and delete the diffuse, and I want to add an emission shader, which will connect into the material surface so it turns white. And I want to add an image texture. Whoop, get back here. Image texture, there we go. I'm going to run the color into the color of the emission, so that all goes black. Now I'm going to go find my clean plate that I just did. In this case, right 192. And as you can see, hopefully here, we now have a projected version of it. So if you look at the plane, it's all distorted, right? It's super stretched out and everything like that. But if you look, this post over here is gone. And if we go to our camera view, And let's actually just make this larger here. You can see that everything lines up. I'm looking at the white line in particular here, where that extends to the edge that way. That looks good. The seams where it connects to the actor looks good. Again, we're on our one frame that we wanted. Let's go ahead and get rid of that node graph editor. And now, as I scrub through the shot, even though from here everything looks all freaky and distorted, from here, because it's projected, the way it works and the move is not that extreme, this all works just fine. Now, yes, when we get to the beginning of the shot here, that's not going to cut it at that point. That's why we'd have a separate clean plate for that particular rig. But for painting out the rig that existed over here, we're going to be good to go. All that's left to do now is just go ahead and render this sucker out. So come over here, set up your render presets however you like to do it, render it out, and then we can go ahead and jump back into Natron and finish our painting. So what I'm going to do is go and drag this down a little bit here. Let's go and fill that to the frame. And let's read in our render. Like I said, I've already pre-rendered this, so I did cheat a little bit. So we'll go and bring that in. And if we merge this into the shot, we will see the exact same thing that we had in the Blender view just moments ago. As I scrub through the shot, everything looks quite nice. So what we need to do now is actually just roto out the section that we want. So I'm going to view my original read, hit O for roto, and let's make this bigger and zoom in a little bit so we can see what we're doing. And I'm going to roto out these shapes, or the shape of this, I should say. Because I've done probably over 100 of these shots already for work, I know that this is the best roto shape to use for this particular rig. And now it's just a matter of going through, keyframing this all into place. Let's try this again. So I want that one there. And I usually do about every 50 frames or so to start with, and then I'll go through and start doing the in-between frames afterwards. So I'm just going to go through every 50 frames until it's gone. Just like this. Bring that back down. And again, like I said, I learned node compositing with Nuke primarily, like that's what I'm most comfortable with. And here I am inside of Natron, a free piece of software, completely at home because all the keyboard shortcuts are the same and the basic interface is the same. So if I've learned Nuke, you've learned Natron, and vice versa. If you learn Natron, you now know how to use Nuke, and you can probably get a job very easily in the effects industry. In fact, if you're looking for a job and willing to move out to North Idaho, let me know, and I could talk to my boss and see if we could hook you up. Although we are a Natron shop now, so if you're learning Natron, that's even a bigger plus. So I'm just going to scroll through. That's all looking good. So I want to just follow this off screen until I see that last bit of pink right there. And we'll line that up like that. And we'll go back a few more frames and just drag that off to the side. I know that's poor habits to do that, but you know what? It works. Alright, so going through the shot, that's all looking pretty good. Whoop, a little bit off right here, so we'll just go and recenter that. Cool. Now, we come back to our main scene, fit that all to frame. I'm going to go ahead and hide my roto lines just so you can watch the magic here. I want you to watch this window when I plug in the mask input of the merge to the roto. And we view the merge. Ready? 3, 2, 1, watch over here. Boom! It completely disappears. It doesn't matter what frame I'm on, that sucker is gone and it's not coming back. So that is awesome. You can see how simple that was to do. The most time-consuming part, like I said, is probably the tracking and the rendering. I also like to come in here and I give it a blur of about 25 pixels. That helps smooth things out a little bit. Now, one thing I have noticed here, because this is what I do day in and day out, is that we've got a little bit of a color shift happening. I can see, let me see if I can show you guys what I'm looking at here. There we go. There's a little bit of a white outline. You can see that's slightly lighter than the rest of the image. And that'll eventually go away. So what I like to do then is come up here to that patch. And we're going to add a color corrector. And let's just go and turn on the game again. I'm watching right here. We'll zoom in so you guys can see. Hopefully you can see this on the recording. And I just wanted to go and turn down the gain just a little bit until that blends in. That might be a little bit much. Probably right around, no, go down a little bit more. Right there, that's good. And we'll set a keyframe on that. Now we'll bounce forward a little bit, and we can see, oh, it's too dark now, right? So let's go ahead and reset that back to 1. And actually, I could probably go a little bit brighter even, too, at that point. There we go. That looks pretty good. And so now, as it morphs between, you won't even see that thing coming. So, oh. There we go. Sometimes, by the way, Natron does have this bug. I don't know why it happens, but it disables this B input, and then it gives you like a really weird like error thing going up on here in your viewer. So by the way, any developers, please take note of that. That half the time when I do these merges, that B channel, the alpha always gets disabled, and I always have to come in when I see I have issues like you just saw. I have to come in and re-enable that, and that fixes everything in an extremely complex composite shot. So anyway, just my little rant on that. So now at this point, it'd be really easy to just come through and do the same thing for the rig down here, for the tennis ball, and for that as well. And once we get all that painted out, we can come in here and bring in whatever 3D geometry we want that goes along with the shot. In this case, I just have some Suzanne action going on. And this is not what we actually used in the show, but I just want to put something in here so you guys can see kind of how Final Shot works with the paint out and stuff like that. So I hope that made sense to you guys. I hope you guys have enjoyed as well. Let me know again in the comments if you have any questions. I'm El Director, and you've been watching Indie Rebel Hollywood Effects without the Hollywood budget.